If you were lucky enough to get the new Golden Dawn Yuno in a summon, let me just say, he is very, very good. And today we're going to be talking about his skills and what skills you want to upgrade first, what skill cards you want to potentially put on him, what gear is going to work on him, whether or not he's actually worth enhancing, what talents you want to run on the talent tree, and of course, what teams he is going to fit well on for PvP and PvE. So let's just hop right into it and start by talking about his skills, specifically his passive skill that you get for getting to LR status. If all allies have the power attribute, grant self a 20% increased mobility buff. The power attribute means they're red allies, okay? So if all allies are red, you get a 20% increased mobility buff. This is going to help him go earlier in the battle. Like, he's going to get his turn earlier because of this mobility buff, if you know anything about mobility. However, I do want to point out his speed is relatively low at 107, so it's only going to really give him the initial advantage turn 1, but then after turn 1 it's not going to do like as much, okay? But this is still pretty good for turn 1, helping him go first, so that way you can ultimately end up using his ultimate. So his whole kit builds towards his ultimate, all right? So let's start with the skill 1. Skill 1 is called Sylph's Gentle Breeze. It is a single target attack, and if an enemy is afflicted with silence or total silence, there is a 50% chance to grant self a 20% increased mobility buff, okay? That's pretty nice. And then as you upgrade this skill, that chance goes up to 60 and then 70% activation rate to give yourself a 20% mobility buff. So that's really, really nice, especially when you look at what his other skills do. You're pretty much always going to be attacking somebody who is silenced or total silenced, which is honestly kind of insane. And then for his skill 2, it's called Swift White Blow. It is an AoE attack, and it has a 30% chance to inflict silence on an enemy for 2 turns. Silence is going to stop them from using just their skill 2, but that's really good when you're taking on, for example, enemy Noels who barrier on skill 2. That is crazy, crazy good, right? And the important thing to notice is it is only a 30% chance, so keep that in mind. And then also you get an additional effect if you have his skill card equipped. We'll talk about what that is when we get to skill cards, okay? But it's like, it's okay, but it's not like anything too crazy, but it's decent, right? And then as you upgrade this skill, you increase the silence activation rate to 50%, and that silence is actually really good. So, you know, that might be one to upgrade. And then for his special skill, it is a single target attack, but this attack inflicts total silence on an enemy for 2 turns. That is 2 turns where they cannot use their skill 2 or their special 2 skill, guaranteed. That is insanely good, okay? And then it inflicts taunts on the enemy for 1 turn, meaning they also are going to have trouble using certain combo attacks and stuff like that. So that's really good as well. And then inflicts a 20% reduced mobility debuff on the enemy as well. So it's going to take them even longer to get through those 2 turns of total silence. So this is just completely shuts down one of the characters on the enemy team, which is absolutely crazy. And then you can extend or increase the percentage of how much mobility reduction you're doing up to 32%, I believe is what that adds up to. So that's insane. Reducing their mobility by that much, making it so that it takes them longer to get turns so that they're silenced longer, is just crazy. Like, that's so good. So if you haven't guessed, in terms of upgrade priority, I would recommend special skill first, then skill 2 because that AoE is crazy, and then skill 1. Okay, so that should be your upgrade priority. His combo skill is good, but it doesn't need to be upgraded. It inflicts total silence on an enemy for 1 turn. Okay, so it's the same thing as a special skill, 1 enemy. It's not bad. Okay, it's fairly decent. And then as for skill cards that you should be equipping to him, right now I have a more defensive skill card, but you know, you could run potentially any debuffer skill card on him and it would be decent, okay? But I really like this one because it is mostly a free-to-play option, because a lot of people will have this skill card just from randomly pulling, right? And so when you have it fully enhanced, it's kind of nuts for an SR skill card. Defense plus 50% and endurance plus 10%. This is literally one of my favorite skill cards, and it's only goes on debuffers, so it works really well on Yuno, and I do recommend running it if you are like me and you don't have his skill card. Now, if you do have his skill card, I still only really recommend running it if you have it upgraded or enhanced, okay? Because upon attacking an enemy afflicted with silence or total silence, there is a 10 to 100% chance to grant self a SP plus 1, to +3 buff, okay? Now, it's only a 10% chance at level 1 and a +1 buff at level 1. But if you fully enhance the skill card, then it's guaranteed to get +3, which is insanely good. So if you're a whale, or you just got insanely lucky and got this skill card fully duped out, right, then it is worth it to run a skill card, because that's just broken, right? You're going to get +3 SP right there just for attacking somebody who's silenced, which Yuno can do pretty easily because he silences people. He AoE silences people with his skill too. So yeah. And then the additional effect you get with this skill card on his skill 2 is it inflicts a SP -1 debuff on the enemy as well. And while that may not seem like a lot, like I said, it was okay, it is actually pretty decent because it does delay the ultimate attack of one enemy for 1 turn. Okay, so that could make a difference in the long term of the battle. And then other options you could run besides his skill card and the SR skill card I showed you would be this skill card for Noelle that is coming up here for Season 4 very, very soon on Global. And so what this does is upon taking damage, there is a 20 to 100% chance to inflict a SP -1 debuff on all enemies. So that does basically the same thing his skill card would have done, and that's always going to be helpful. And this is on all enemies, which is insanely good, right? So that's one you could run. You could also run Rills, who has a 60% chance to apply 10 to 20% defense reduction on a random enemy for 2 turns when using a special skill. And since Yuno's whole kit relies on his special skill, this would work pretty well for that as well. And then you could also run Lotuses. You could also run Charlottes. You can run any debuffers, really, like I was saying. But Lotuses I like as well. Has a 25% chance to apply a 2 to 10% speed reduction to an enemy for 1 turn upon attacking anytime you attack. Okay, so doing speed reduction on top of everything else Yuno is doing, that would be honestly pretty dang good for him. So those are kind of the skill cards I would run for him besides this skill card right here. Now, in terms of gear, what you should be running on Yuno should be focused more towards sets as opposed to stats, okay? What you're going to want is you're going to want a full speed set, gold preferably, and a half defense set. So a gold set is pretty much the same as a regular set, except for it's better. Okay, so if you go to sets, you can see over here, this is attack set, defense set, HP set, mobility set, so on and so forth. Well, same thing over here, attack set, defense set, HP set, mobility set, but they have a gold star. Gold sets are always going to be better because they're going to give you better stats. And so if you look at this right here, at a 4 set, I'm getting an additional 5 speed on Yuno, which is just going to help him in the long run. Pretty much on debuffers, you are almost always going to want like a speed set and a defense set to help give them the priority on the turn and to also give them more survivability, okay? So that's what I have here. Now, in terms of stats that you're going for, if you're looking for attack or magic attack, technically you should be going for magic attack. It doesn't really matter on debuffers though, because they're not going to be doing that much damage. More than anything, I would focus on either HP or defense, increasing those, just so that your debuffer will end up surviving longer. Okay, so that's kind of what I would do overall in terms of gear. Now, whether or not you should enhance him, let's talk about that, because I'm going to say right now, I would say this is kind of the whale's character, because you do want to whale on this character to fully dupe him out, and you also need to fully dupe out his skill card, as you saw, to make it like useful. And so when you enhance this character to just 2 stars, he gets infinitely better. Okay, upon attacking an enemy afflicted with silence or total silence, grants self a SP +2 buff. Okay, that is insanely good. So let's say you had his skill card fully done and you only had 2 dupes of him right here. That would be a +5 skill buff whenever, or a +5 SP buff whenever you attack an enemy who is silenced or total silenced. Okay, he would almost have his ultimate. He would have his ultimate back in 2 turns. That's crazy. That's crazy, crazy good, okay? If you get him to 4 stars, he gets more damage resist, giving him more survivability. And then at 5 stars, you still get the extra SP, but then upon attacking an enemy afflicted with total silence, it also inflicts a SP -2 debuff on them, which is insane. This guy is freaking nuts when he's fully duped, but he does have to be fully duped, and so that's why I call him the whale's character, right? If you even just have a copy of him, though, I'm not going to lie, he's still going to be really, really, really good on mono red teams. So, you know, if you got him, even just a copy of him, trust me, you have won, okay? But if you're able to, you know, it's good to get multiple copies or to use versatile mage pieces on him. As a general pool unit, this is one of the general pool units I actually would recommend duping out all the way, because he's very good when you do. Now, in terms of talents, I would probably go for just damage dealt and crit damage. Now, you could always go for like magic attack and crit rate, but I feel like that's just not going to matter. Realistically, attack stats don't matter that much on a debuffer, but I would probably go damage dealt and crit damage right there to just maximize his damage. In terms of defense, it's the same as what I pretty much always recommend. 20% extra defense, always good. And then stacking defense and crit resist for 5 waves, good as well. And then on support, you could go either or. You could go for getting his special back faster because, as you know, his special is insane with the total silence. Or you could go for the AoE spam of the skill 2, which has a 30% chance to just silence enemies, making it so they can't use skill 2. So depending on what you want to use more, do you want to use your AoE silence or do you want to use your total silence where you can shut off their special skill and skill 2? That will kind of determine what you go for. And then, of course, you go for damage resist no matter what. Okay, so those are the talents I would go for on Yuno. Now, last but not least, let's talk about what teams he can fit on for the game. Now, here is one team for PvP that I would recommend, okay? The idea is you have speed with Finroll, of course. You have the extra mobility on Yuno from his passive. You're running an all-red team. You are going to be able to silence/total silence the enemy. You're able to remove barriers with Asta if you need, and he's paired up with Noelle for the AoE attack if you need. He also is just an insanely good attacker on his own, and Noelle has her AoE and her barriers as well. Like, this team works very, very well as a mono red team. And Yuno, by himself, just existing with the silence, brings the red team into meta and lets the red team compete with the blue team, which, you know, has been a struggle for a while on global if you've been playing in PvP. So this is an insanely, insanely good team, and probably my personal option that I would use when taking this Yuno into PvP. And now another team you could run, and this would be a PvE or PvP team. I think of this more as like a PvE team because you got like AoE here, you got AoE here, you got AoE here, right? And it's just really good for clearing mobs, and then you have his silence, so it's just like kind of the cherry on top. Mostly a PvE team here. However, this could be a potential PvP team. You just might have to worry about being slower than the enemy team, okay? And really, like, this Yuno is just good with any red unit. You could switch out any of these units and see this Yuno be good, right? So I could go and I could throw on a character like Charlotte here, and I would probably honestly keep Finroll if I could, just for the extra speed to be safe. And you could do something like this, and this would probably work. Literally, Yuno works with any red character, any red team, so run him how you will. Those are just kind of some like team ideas that I think would work well for you guys. And that is it for this build guide. If you guys did enjoy the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, and thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.